I've asked each one of the panelists to become prepared to speak to their vision of community power and what I would call their hopes of community power going forward for just a couple of minutes each. And then we're going to have a series of questions which I've prepared and will turn to the panelists to respond to, but I will also really actually encourage you to ask questions as well around any topic in the area of the community power area, because this is meant to be a very dialogic, interactive kind of session. And I believe for this session as well that we've put a microphone available to you somewhere around here. Just to be sure where it is. At the front there somewhere. Okay. All right in front of me? Okay. So for everybody to hear your questions, then you're going to ask you to come up here. So it's great to see so many familiar faces and so many committed faces to this work. So the panel, as is talked about in our introductory brochure, is basically aims to address the questions concerning how election outcomes will impact the evolution of community power in Ontario and what are expected outcomes from the FIT review. Panelists will discuss the future of community power in the province, barriers, and counter their own vision of where it could be going, and certainly reflect on their own experience. Not necessarily in order, but I think maybe it might be in order. We have Joanne Barrell, who is President A&T Energy, a founding member of A&T Energy. Joanne was appointed president in April 2010. A&T Energy is about community-owned power generation, putting the green energy economy to work in Northern Ontario. So an interesting perspective there. Next panelist, known I'm sure to many of you, Judith Lipp is the Executive Director of TREC, a renewable energy cooperative, and has recently launched the sister charitable organization, TREC Foundation. TREC acts as an incubator, developer, and administrator of community-owned renewable energy projects, and we all know TREC and some of Judy's experience. Rob Kerr, next, is the corporate manager, community energy, City of Guelph, and I think City of Guelph is often held up as the showcase, the best practices around energy to be looking towards. Rob has a bachelor's degree in physics and environmental studies and has over 25 years of experience working in the energy management field, including a career in parallel to a rapidly changing energy landscape, from straightforward energy conservation activities to leading-edge approaches to energy, climate change, and community stability, so sustainability, rather. Rob Maxwell is the manager of the Toronto Renewable Energy Office, which supports the City of Toronto's sustainable energy objectives by facilitating the installation of renewable energy technologies on city buildings and hopefully in consolidation with community groups. And finally, Mike Yakimchuk. Mike has had progressively senior roles in the financial and energy companies, both in Canada and the United States. I didn't know about the financial side, Mike, but now it makes sense given all your other interest in spreadsheets and so on. Working with established corporations as well as venture capitalist initiatives. He's a licensed professional engineer, is a board member of Bright Sky Power, and also on, I think I'll leave it at that, Bright Sky Power. You can do your other things. Okay, so what I would like to do is start it off with just a little bit of information. Some recent information that I've done, or statistical analysis that I've done on megawatts of power contracted for in Ontario since the launch of the feed-in tariff program. There's been a lot going on out there, a lot of activity on the commercial side, but when you break down the numbers, about 9% of the megawatts awarded, my recent numbers, 9% of it, which is not a bad number in and of itself, is for community. That community part of it includes both First Nations and also includes the broader definition of community, which is one or more residents of the province of Ontario. And God bless their souls, farmers have taken a tremendous advantage of some of this work. But when you bring it down to a collective of people in a community coming together to do things together themselves, like Bright Sky and others around here, it's really only about 1% of the megawatts that have been contracted today are really from that collective group of organizations, cooperatives, charities, not-for-profits have really taken advantage of this program. So there's a big gap to fill. So to help us fill that gap, our panel are going to talk about their hopes and aspirations for it. But I want to first of all start off with a little video that we've been using for our community power road shows that OSEA has been taking out. And we've done 10 of 15. Now, I'll give you a real 5-minute snapshot of what community power is about from our perspective, and then we'll let the rest of the group talk about it from their perspective.
What do subprime mortgages have to do with Atlantic salmon, SUVs, and globalization? They all depend on cheap oil, but oil is peaking, so you can count on the price at the pump going up. And as transportation costs rise, so will the cost of our food. That means that we have to wean ourselves from fossil fuels and re-engineer our lives to adapt to a world of growing energy scarcity. The good news is your neighbors and your neighborhood are about to get a lot more important in the not-too-distant future. Margaret Mead, a famous anthropologist, once said, "Never underestimate how a small group of thoughtful people could change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." That's where community power comes in. Thinking and acting locally. It's the only way that we are going to be able to address the issues facing us today and generations to come. We have significant challenges in front of us. CO2 emissions are pouring into the atmosphere. If the global climate warms beyond an average increase of 2 degrees, the impacts will be far more devastating than we can imagine. Community power and the Ontario Sustainable Energy Association, OSEA, is a way for people to share adversity and decide what to do about it while creating economic benefits. The Green Energy and Green Economy Act is unlike anything else in North America. It created the framework for a cross-section of communities to come together and created the infrastructure to turn vision into action. We are faced with 2 paths. The hard path, centralized productions of energy, continuous consumption, and limitless growth. Or the soft path, local production of energy, locally owned, with resilient and sustainable communities. We need to make a choice of which direction we want to take. The hard path is more of the same, and leads to irreversible consequences. We need to make this choice together, to decide on the vision we want for our communities, and to take action on what we want to create together. The greatest challenge is about leadership. Finding those people in a community who have the passion and want to make a difference. That is where you come in. You are a local guy, girl, a local group, a church, or a municipal leader who sees the benefits of community power and who want to build community resiliency. But where to start? That is where we at OSEA come in with our roadmap for getting your community power project from vision to reality. OSEA's Roadmap to Success workshop will take you on a deep dive into the roadmap tools and techniques. We will create a project in your community and help you develop an action plan to bring it from vision to reality. The Community Energy Partnership Program, CEPP, offers 90% grants on eligible activities to test the technical, financial, and governance feasibility of a community project. And the Act changed the Cooperative Corporations Act to follow for the creation of renewable energy cooperatives as a means to encourage community involvement. Fun, challenging, paving the way for community-inspired action to save the planet. It's a reason to meet your neighbors throughout your community. It's a way for all of us to literally invest in the future. You will be able to actually buy a share in the development from a community-operated renewable energy cooperative. You will be a member of a democratically controlled investment opportunity whose primary role after return to investors, shareholders, members is return to the community. Supporting community sports, cultural, environmental, and other philanthropic activities. Is a renewable energy cooperative the right model for your group? This is important to decide as it will influence how you raise capital for the project. A 250 kilowatt solar PV can cost up to $1,500,000. That's a big investment for a community. A 2 megawatt wind project can be $4 to $5 million. But communities are doing it and sharing the investment opportunity locally rather than with the ups and downs of the stock market. The same process is applicable to other renewable energy technologies. Now you are ready to submit your CEPP application. This will help you understand more of the technical, financial, and governance options. Through OSEA's Community Power Services Group, we can assist you through the application process as well as help you to manage the project. The workshop will connect people with passion in the community with organizations and people with assets that can accommodate renewable generation projects, municipal buildings, hospitals, brownfield sites, used landfills, quarries, business rooftops. Once you've found the heart and mind of the community, then there is nothing stopping you from moving your project forward. And what do you know? Other things start to happen. You begin to drive less, shop locally, get to meet new people, build a community energy plan, influence local politicians on environmental matters. You have the capacity to act locally and think locally.
Thank you. That video will be available free of charge at a download on our site, and it's what we've been taking around to the community power workshops that we've been doing that have been sponsored by CEPP Marketing Education Grants. I only show it here to you today to start off some sort of thoughts as just what community power is about with respect to how we at OSEA think about it. Now I'd like to sort of engage others in their perspectives and views on this. And so I've asked each of the panelists, I'll start with Joanne, to address the question in terms of, get my own glasses on here, sort of a 2-minute presentation that how would you define community power, what's your practical experience in community power, and what's your vision for community power in 5 years in time in Ontario? What do you want to see? 2 minutes each for each of our panelists, and then we'll go into a series of questions. So Joanne?
Hi, everybody.
We'll get the microphone close to you and all that kind of stuff.
I think we all have a good understanding of what community power is. A&T Energy was built on the premise of the Green Energy and Economy Act. Once upon a time, there was a foreign direct investor, a large corporation in renewables from Europe. They came around Valrita Hardy, a small northeastern Ontario rural community of 900 residents, looking to strike land use agreements. One of our partners was approached for land. We started talking and we figured our forestry in this area is going down the tubes. Why don't we do it? And that's why we founded A&T Energy. A&T means alternative to forestry, alternative energy, and the T means thoughtful. Ended up applying for a connection for an 8.25 megawatt solar project on the Kapuskasing TS, which is about 10 kilometers from where we live. This was in between RESOP and FIT. Now, when the FIT launch rules were released, we had to rescind capacity in order to apply to the FIT program during the launch period. Unfortunately, the rules around the initialization period bred a discriminatory model against community power projects. Now, of course, there's the 1 cent adder, and of course, there's a CEPP funding, but unfortunately, these incentives are futile if you can't connect to the grid as a community. The 8.25 megawatts that we rescinded were awarded to this foreign direct investor that was initially seeking capacity in our area, looking for land. So that's our story. And since we've been actively advocating with government, with our MPP, with northern ministers, senior policy advisors to the 3 ministers that we've met, to say this is our fundamental right to connect to the Ontario grid. We're Ontario ratepayers. We have applied for a connection. We had to give it up. We had to compete with big developers. And now a big project is going up in our area, and we're not owning it. So we understand that the FIT program in the beginning was really to get manufacturing going, get jobs, get a green economy going. Unfortunately, we only captured 50% of what the Green Energy and Economy Act could actually bring, which is local investment, domestic investment, and the profits would actually stay in province, in Canada, at the very least. So we're continuing. We're representing, of course, our company and our municipality, but at the same time, we're representing the interests of all of the communities in Ontario, because we are still advocating with government that it is our fundamental right as a ratepayer to have first access to any of the connection capacity out there.
Thanks very much, Joanne. Okay. I guess the microphones are going to be variable. So, Judith, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. And thank you for your story, Joanne. I think I'll probably be continuing in a similar vein. For Trek Renewable Energy Cooperative, we've been around since 1998 and have been working on building community-owned projects since that time. We have one successful project down on the waterfront, the wind turbine, that essentially is sort of represents the potential in the power of community in Ontario. We have almost 450 members that have invested in that project. It's a joint venture with Toronto Hydro. So when we completed that project in 2003, I think there was a real sense of possibility. And certainly there's been lots of work between the time that project went up and the Green Energy Act being launched. And I think a lot of us expected to be in this room today celebrating what we had achieved. This is the Community Power Conference. We met last year talking about a lot of the barriers and the challenges, but we were sort of 1 year into the FIT program. 2 years in, you would have thought that there would be a number of announcements of projects that had come to fruition. I'm going to talk about two projects in particular that Trek is working on. One, I am happy to say we have been able to launch. It's a solar co-op called Solar Share. It's 18 sites around southwestern Ontario. We are selling bonds on that project, $1,000 per person per year. So we're hugely proud of that project, the fact that we have almost 600 kilowatts of systems installed, the generating power, they're feeding into the grid today. But there are still challenges with that project, and the challenge in that case is that we would like to enable Ontarians to invest a larger sum of money in that project if they so wish. So $1,000 per bond is sort of, or one bond per person is sort of the low limit of what we're currently allowed to offer to Ontarians under the rules of the Co-op Act. We need to have a receipted offering statement before we can extend the offering and allow people to buy as many bonds as they want. And there certainly is appetite to do that. In fact, we've been polling the 100 members that we have so far. So we've raised $100,000 to date. And if we had a receipted offering statement in hand, we would have raised $500,000 by now. And again, that would then put us in a position to build more projects. So the Solar Share model is intended to create an infrastructure in which we have a portfolio of solar projects around the province that Ontarians can invest in. They become members of the co-op. They have democratic decision-making opportunities within the co-op, and they can help identify projects around the province that are suitable for this sort of initiative. So that's one of the challenges. So what we have is a disconnect between changes to the Co-op Act that were brought in through the Green Energy Act to allow renewable energy co-ops to exist and to introduce essentially a new type of co-op, which is an investment co-op in renewable energy projects. And the disconnect is with the regulatory body that approves offering statements that says to us, well, this isn't a traditional co-op. We can't possibly, we don't understand the model. We're not comfortable receiving your offering statement. So they're essentially stalling not just our own project. There are at least 7 or 8 projects that we know of that are either have submitted an offering statement that's not yet received, or that are holding off submitting their offering statement because they don't have enough information about what is going to be needed and certainly don't want to be resubmitting multiple times, as has been the case with Solar Share. Options for Green Energy is in a similar position, and there are several others. So that's on the regulatory side. The other project I want to mention very quickly is Lake Wind. Lake Wind is a project it's a wind project. We started in 2003, in fact. Again, before RESOP was introduced, we were approached by a local landowner in Kincardine who wanted to pursue a co-op model, a community-owned wind project. So work has been going on. It's a long story. I won't bore you with the details, but basically we have faced every possible challenge that one can face building any kind of renewable energy project in this province. And the latest challenge is that we've submitted, within the initialization period of the FIT program, we decided to submit a 20 megawatt application. And there was some debate internally whether we should go for 10 or 15 or 20, and we were sort of wondering about the capacity and understanding that, you know, once we had submitted our application, we were stuck with the size of the project. In the end, we looked at the numbers on the transformer station. It looked like there should be plenty of room to accommodate a 20 megawatt project. We submitted it and have since learned that there is 18 megawatts left on that transformer station. So we did not get a FIT contract. So again, what we've missed is a huge opportunity to engage people in the Bruce area where there is a strong opposition to wind energy to participate meaningfully in a wind project, and I think it's a huge oversight. So I'll leave it there because there's lots of other stories I'm sure to be told here, and hopefully we can discuss some of the sort of next steps going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judith. Rob Kerr?
Thanks, Harry. I'm the corporate manager, community energy with the City of Guelph, and my job basically is to facilitate the implementation of our community energy plan. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. The plan was ratified by our council in 2007, so it predates the Green Energy Act significantly, and that's an important point I'd like to come back to. The plan really has four main parts. Conservation is fundamental, generation, which I'd like to expand on, as well as distribution, which speaks to district energy and smart meter potential. And overseeing all of that, and this is an important role for the local government, is a very strong density driver. So our official plan right now is frozen our boundaries to 2031 and plans for 50,000 more people. So those broad strokes, by definition, is going to build some significant density within our city that allows for more efficient energy services. Unexpectedly, the Green Energy Act came along, and I mean, at the time of the plan, we weren't following the Green Energy Act, and didn't anticipate that some of the generation activities coming to the forefront as fast as they have. But we were ready for that. So we have, and just put some numbers, I know everybody's talking about sort of the scope of their challenge, so I'd like to do the same thing. The City of Guelph averages about 220 megawatts. We peak almost at 300 in the summertime. Right now in the queue at the OPA, we have a total of 60 megawatts of local projects. So, you know, the significance of that is quite profound for us. That splits down the middle roughly between renewables and combined heat and power. Combined heat and power, of course, is very important for us for thermal energy services looking forward. So let me split that even further and talk about some of our renewable projects. Two of those are cooperative applications that could be as much as 10 megawatts each. Both of them are inside the urban boundaries, and I think that makes Guelph quite unique, and it also creates significant challenges as well. So we have a real urban-based challenge here. Obviously, it's about our community. And that's the story of the development of those two things is a longer one, obviously, but Guelph is well prepared for the notion of cooperative development. We're considered, you know, centers of excellence for cooperatives because of our agricultural roots. Right now, actually, we're counting the number of co-ops in Guelph. There's about 52, and there could be a couple more, obviously, with these projects in development. The real message I think I have in my 2 minutes here is, you know, the notion of local energy infrastructure broadly, if it's conservation, generation, or distribution, doesn't really matter. It's fundamental to our plan. It's fundamental to the point of the Green Energy Act, I believe, and it's why most of the people in the room here today. It's no different for the City of Guelph. But it's been quite tangible for us. We have, just as early as last summer, Canadian Solar committed to move to Guelph. There's some people here today from Canadian Solar. They committed to 500 jobs. In a city the size of Guelph, 123,000 people, that's not nothing. That was a big deal for us, and that has stimulated already a solar cluster that our Chamber of Commerce is scrambling to gather and grow because it's happening so fast, of up to 1,000 local jobs. So we have seen right before our eyes in real time what economic development can come out of this. And so, you know, that brings us to very current times. Canadian Solar just announced last week 60 layoffs. And if any of you read the press release, it's very clear why. It's their book just can't get out the door. And it's a heartbreaker for us at the City of Guelph, and we're seeing that we're connecting the dots so clearly. So the message I bring today and want to, you know, move forward is certainly Guelph's made its commitment towards acting in the context of this policy. And we really look to the province to sort of honor their commitments so that we can grow on the track that we've committed to. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Maxwell?
Thanks very much, Harry. I think that the City of Toronto's history in the area of sustainable energy, broadly written, is fairly well known. Judith talked about the turbine at Exhibition Place, which is, of course, an agency of the City of Toronto. 20 years ago, we established the Toronto Atmospheric Fund, and about the same time, the Better Buildings Partnership, which are organizations and programs that are, I think, fairly well known to folks. And throughout the ensuing 20 years have been engaged in a broad range of sustainable energy activities. I have to say, I find it a bit ironic, though, that although the Green Energy Act has created, and the feed-in tariff have created some real opportunities, not just for the city and for municipalities as a whole, but for the wider energy sector, that it has also created a number of new challenges for the city. And I think in many ways we feel a bit like the forgotten child of the broader public sector, looking at, you know, compared to universities, hospitals, etc. And I think before the city can define a really clear role for itself in the area of community power, that we need to have a clearer understanding of where we fit in the, another use of the word fit, where we fit in the wider energy picture in the province. And we have, unfortunately, gotten a lot of what I think are very mixed signals from Queen's Park in the past few years. I think one of the best kept secrets in the whole FIT program is that municipalities alone among the broader public sector have to pay taxes on the revenue that we derive from the feed-in tariff program, and that's can be a deal breaker. It's not entirely clear to us what the impact of that is going to be in terms of the business cases that we develop for our own renewable projects, but it's certainly a factor that enters into the equation and may grow relatively larger depending on the outcome of the FIT review. There were three programs, funding programs, that were announced as part of FIT: the Community Energy Power Program, which we heard a bit about in the video, the Aboriginal program, but there was also to be a municipal renewable energy program, which is yet to see the light of day. There have been discussions and consultations on that, but we are, it doesn't appear, at least from our perspective, any further ahead 2 years later on that. You know, there were funding programs created for other broader public sector bodies, the boards of education, for social housing, quite substantial amounts of money made available for renewals, and again, municipalities weren't able to participate in that. We don't have an adder that is available to a number of others. And really, I think that one of the main impacts that has happened, and arguably this is a good or a bad thing from a community power perspective, but the main thing that happened to municipalities in the Green Energy Act was the removal of planning approvals for projects for renewable energy, which in the city's case was not a significant issue. We had amended our zoning bylaw before the FIT was adopted and before the Green Energy Act was introduced to allow renewable energy generation virtually in any part of the city. Previously, it had been considered an industrial use and was designated as only being able to take place in industrially zoned areas. So I'm probably running way over my 2 minutes here, and I want to get to the discussion and to questions. But I guess for me, really, it's we're waiting to hear from the province what is the role that you expect us to play in this. We have found things to do within FIT. We're looking at generating power ourselves and have done that for some time. But we think there's a lot more we can do, and we just need to get a clear signals, clear direction from the ministry as to where we can go.
Okay, Rob, thanks very much. And Mike?
Thank you, Harry. And thank you to OSEA for inviting Bright Sky Power to participate in this panel. And I was looking at the video and going through all the steps that the OSEA's Community Power Group had put together, and realized that Bright Sky is basically has followed the OSEA model down to a T, and everything from our formation as a renewable energy co-op to our application to the CEPP for a grant to working with OSEA to develop our project. So I think we're pretty much a model project that's followed the OSEA blueprint, and I must say that I think it's been an excellent one, and we hope to work with and continue to work with OSEA on it. But we founded Bright Sky Power is a renewable energy co-op in Burlington, and we were founded by an environmental group, Burlington Green. And Burlington Green's been around for about 5 years in Burlington now, and we've done a lot of things in Burlington to try to make it a better place to live. We're an awareness building group. We are an advocacy group, and I'm on the board of Burlington Green, and we brought up this project about 2 years ago, and we realized that a renewable energy co-op was a perfect way for us to further our mission, especially in the renewable energy or clean energy sector. We thought it would be a great way to bring to a grassroots level the whole concept of renewable energy, the need for renewable energy, and to help the people to participate in it. So about 2 years ago, we formed Bright Sky Power, and we had some early initial successes. We were one of the first groups to apply for and receive a Community Energy Partnerships Program grant. We had a local businessman that offered up his roof to host our project, and we got a lot of interest from the community. We have a number of prominent local people that are on our board of directors and helping us all along the way. And we recently ran into a bit of a snag in the sense that the first rooftop host project, the person who owned it decided that this looked so good he's going to do it himself, and we lost out on that. But we're looking for another roof, and we have a number of candidate projects on the go, and we're confident we'll be able to find one. To us, community power really is about making people aware of how important renewable energy is in the scheme of things here. We're starting to talk to we've started to get some pickup from our local council about doing a community energy plan. We were pretty much instrumental in bringing this to their attention and work with showcasing Guelph's example. And Rob, thank you very much for your help in that. And we still want community power to be a cornerstone part of that energy plan. It means that community power has to be here for the long run. It has to survive fit. It has to be here for 5 years, for 10 years. And we need to somehow put our heads together and work out a way to figure that to happen. It's got to be here and be part of the local energy plan. Our vision is to see community power deliver in the environment, building that awareness and telling people how important it is to have renewable energy to prevent climate change or do our part in preventing climate change. We need to build a new energy infrastructure. We can't have the old, generation over here and load over there and deliver it through our transmission system. We have to radically re-engineer our electricity system, and the community energy plan is a big part of that. We'll be able to get the community to be participating and figuring out what the needs of the group are, of the community are, and to figure out how we can best meet those needs. And finally, pricing. This is a big one. We need to pay more for electricity, and it's simple. We can't get away with paying what we've paid in the past. And if we can somehow use community power to soften that message, to show how the people can still be able to participate and benefit from renewable energy, maybe we can get them to pay more for power, because that has to be part of that future. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks very much to all our panelists for their opening remarks. There is some additional chairs at the front here. If you would like to take some of those chairs, please move up. I'd like to start off now with a series of questions. I'm going to sort of move between focused questions on an individual and broader questions to the panel. I'd ask you as a group, too, to be thinking about some of the things that you want to ask our experienced panel, because clearly you can see that there's lots of challenges, some successes, but seems to be lots of obstacles that are put in the way. So it makes me think about, first of all, so why should we care? So I'm going to ask Joanne if she could start us off and just address the question, how does community power impact the community? Why is it important to us?
Well, obviously, it's an income stream. Decentralization is another idea that comes to mind. Especially in rural Ontario, a lot of the communities are not very versatile for their income streams. They make their money on their tax base, but it's difficult. And especially in rural northeastern Ontario, relying on forestry, it's important for us to look at other methods of bringing in income to the community. Another reason why we want to diversify is that our kids can come back and work in our community. Forestry is not working anymore. It's kind of at a standstill at this point. So if we're going to do anything else, why not participate in the green energy economy that's happening? Studies have shown that sales for energy are 16% higher if they're community owned. Revenue stays in the jurisdiction, so if you're making profits, you're reinvesting them, obviously. You're reinvesting your money in your community. You're spending locally. Wage impacts were 42% higher for community energy projects. Business income impacts were 53% higher for community energy. And revenue taxes, 8% higher. So this 1 cent adder, it's just a drop in the bucket. I think government should really take a good look at the additional benefits of community power as income into Ontario, using Ontario money and diversifying our economy. Not only in manufacturing, but also in ownership of our own assets. We wonder why were Liberal ridings in rural Ontario not part of the game this year in the elections? We always like to call NIMBYism. Well, NIMBYs, they will use the health card till they're blue in the face, because it's all that's going to get them into court to stop these projects going forward. What the real cry is, I think, is that they're not having a say. They have to look at it, but they're not benefiting from it. And if government would actually take a hard look at this particular issue, I think that NIMBYism would actually be an IMBYism. In my backyard, I own it, I look at it, the revenue stays local, so let's do it.
Okay, thanks very much, Joanne. And I'm going to ask Mike if he could help us on a particular question here as well. You've had lots of experience, Mike, and with Bright Sky, and lots of successes moving forward, then sort of things kind of got in the way. So what are the barriers that groups need to be considering, and why do they exist? Why is it so difficult to move some of these projects forward?
Well, in Burlington, we really liked this whole concept of a co-op, and when we started talking to people about a co-op, they really had some paradigms in their minds that it was hard to ship them from, and they couldn't really grasp how a co-op would be able to help in the renewable energy project in Burlington. So that was one of the shifts that we had to try and overcome. Another one was working with our city council. I mean, all of the councillors need to be educated on the benefits of a community power project. And it takes time, and you have to deliver that message over and over and over again. You just can't go up to them and do one presentation and think everything sits in or sinks in. It doesn't. It takes a while for that light bulb to go off. So you've got to work at convincing them of the benefits of the project. And then the resources. This is a lot of this stuff is community driven, volunteer driven. We've all got daytime jobs. We come home. We've got our families, and we have to go out and try to do what we can to better the community in where we live. And it takes time to do that, and it takes time and resources to knock on people's doors and help them understand the value of contributing the roof to the project and being involved in the project. So I'd say it's a combination of awareness, of education to the people that can make a difference at City Council, and resources.
Okay. How about, I'm going to ask John Kerr a question here around, you've been very successful, John, and you qualified that in your community. Why? But I'm wondering why haven't municipalities become more engaged? But before you answer that, and I'll give you a few seconds just to reflect on the question, are there any questions that are starting to emerge out here in the group that we can start to sort of look towards helping get some dialogue? Anything that's coming to your mind from the experiences of the individuals that you've heard so far? Okay, can you come up to the front here so everybody can hear it, or is that it's not a wireless, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's a long wire. Walk up there and meet them halfway. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Hello, thank you. It's Rob Yost with the Life Co-op. I guess the question I have is, right now we have a Ontario domestic content rule for the inputs, the manufacturer.
You're too close to it, right? That's the problem. Got to move this way. Move this way.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Not even on. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have
now you're featured.
Good. We have our domestic content rule for the inputs into the system itself. I guess my question is what would a good percentage be for a local domestic content on the investment side of it? For example, should we have a 50% or a 40% domestic content rule on the investment side?
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to start with that response?
No. I think the OSEA actually had a 50% content somewhere. You can correct me, David, if I'm wrong, but somewhere in the language.
Right.
They were looking for 50% domestic or Ontario ownership, yeah, in the initial ask to government. Of course, now that we look at the grid, unfortunately there's not a lot of capacity out there, so I don't think it would be reasonable for us to expect that in the next 2 years we could actually have an uptake of 50% community energy projects. There's not enough capacity out there to plug them all in. Ideally, it would be nice to get 25%, but again, capacity isn't available at this time to accommodate that. My thoughts on that, any additional capacity that becomes available should be offered to communities first. First right of refusal. If you have a FIT application sitting in that famous queue and you have 18 projects above you that are large developers, I think that the community project should be brought to the top of the list and connected first.
Can I just?
Yeah, please, Judith.
Oh, I just wanted to add to that. There are is this on? There are jurisdictions where community ownership proportion is mandated. So Quebec has just introduced something like that. So I mean, it certainly could be a policy piece. That there's a requirement, and I like using the language local content. It sort of goes along with the theme that the government itself has already established. What the right number is, I think it's an exercise that we've been doing with CP Fund. Various groups have been meeting to discuss, what is the ask from the community power sector, and we've been trying to run the numbers on, what's a realistic number? How many Ontarians could we engage over the next, 5 to 10 years into community-owned projects? And a lot of it has to do with how much is there RSP eligibility? How much can we expect people to invest? What's the capacity, et cetera? So I think it's a useful exercise. I think it's one that we will be moving forward, and I think obviously this conference here will allow us to flesh some of those details out.
Thank you. Mike, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, just a quick add. I see a lot of benefits to requiring some local community ownership, because the biggest of which is the learning of this. Because if you can partner with somebody who's done it before, then as a community group, you can figure out how to do it. And next time you may not need that partnership as much. And that is an invaluable resource to be able to do.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to a question to Rob Kerr, and I'll repeat it. I'm thinking about the successes you've had in Guelph, and you qualified some of that. Why haven't municipalities been more engaged, and what can municipalities do to be more engaged in this whole community power movement?
That's a big question. I think, well, there's a couple of kind of mechanical reasons. Municipalities are compelled to procure services of various kinds in a competitive process, and cooperative projects don't fit that very well. So that's one thing that we saw happen. And maybe I can talk about the solution we use to that. Is we are, is that me?
Well, that's probably me.
Yeah. We're the sole shareholder of our local utility, and so one thing we did last summer was kind of a structural move. Was we mandated our utility to be the developer of certainly all the corporate energy assets. We kept it rather vague, and that way we could use them to creatively put projects together. And so our utility plays a role in both of the cooperative projects I described in my opening statement. And the other part of my answer would be a really well-developed and a well-executed community energy plan, which we have, is really important. I think I hear it often. We get lots of compliments for us and our work, but I'm always a little bit modest about that. A lot of cities have energy plans or sustainability plans. I think the vulnerability of all those plans is they don't have an implementation plan, and that would be something that I would brag about more than the actual plan itself. So we've maintained a network of stakeholders that were in the planning process are now around the table committed to implementation. And we've put a lot of formality to that. The Mayor's Task Force on Community Energy is what it's called. So all the stakeholders that you could imagine in a community our size are there and quite committed, and they solve problems together. And our two cooperative projects, I think I could safely say, have strong roots in that task force. The ideas were born, the partnerships were born out of those task force activities.
Okay, go ahead, Rob Maxwell. You want to ask something?
Yeah, a couple of points. One is that municipalities respond to demand, and we need to feel demand from the community power sector. And so you need to step up and speak to the mayor and to local councillors, not just in our case, but in all municipalities across the province. That said, we just had there was an election here in Ontario recently, but there was also an election on the municipal level just over a year ago, and certainly in Toronto that led to a change in administration, and there's the previous administration paid a lot of attention to energy sustainability issues, and the new administration has a different set of priorities, and so the challenge in our case is probably that much greater. There are, I think, talking points that work better than others. I think one of the advantages of not just community power, but sustainable energy broadly, is that it has a number of benefits, and we've heard a bit about some of those from Northern Ontario perspective. The same is true in a big city like Toronto. There are a lot of benefits, and I think it's up to the proponents of community power to be able to define those and to understand the priorities of the administration at whatever level of government you're speaking to, and talk the language that is important to them. And I think there is a very strong case that can be made. The second point, which is very different and quite mundane on the technical side, it has to do with rooftop solar PV, which is really in Toronto is kind of the biggest game in town, and it all comes down to the condition of roofs of our own municipally owned buildings. We have a program that we're engaged in with our LDC, Toronto Hydro. We're trying to jointly build 2 megawatts of rooftop PV on our city-owned buildings. And we have, within the under direct title to the city, leaving aside all of the agencies and commissions, which also own land and buildings, the city itself owns over 1,500 buildings. And we have been very hard pressed to find 20 of those which are large enough to install that 2 megawatts on. Just the roof condition, roof structural issues are enormous. And to me, the solution to that could be, and this could be the answer to the question I posed earlier about what's happening with the municipal renewable energy program, is that if they were to convert that fund, or to task that fund with assisting municipalities in providing the infrastructure that is necessary for community power projects, in this case, being able to repair our roofs and bring them up to a condition where you can put a PV system on them for 20 years, then I think that would certainly benefit the municipalities, but it would also benefit community power advocates as well.
Okay, Mike, I just want to bring in the audience here a bit more before I go to you. Dave, you wanted to ask a question?
Can I speak from here okay? I'm David Hahn. I'm chair of the Frontenac County Green Energy Task Force, and I'm also over 65, and I'd just like to kind of make a comment here. We have, in many cases when we try to put together a project, we have issues of raising the capital, but we also have a lot of people who have got money that they can't figure out what to do with, what to invest in now. And I remember back an epoch ago or so when before deregulation, and widows and anybody who had some money that they had to invested it in Bell Canada, because Bell Canada was a utility, which isn't so far from what we're talking about here, that had guaranteed results in terms of your financial returns. And I think that one thing, I'm kind of answering your earlier question about what my vision of 5 or 10 years down the road is. I would like to see co-ops established so solidly all around the province that little old ladies who are widows and need to invest their money somewhere could buy debentures from renewable energy co-ops and have a guaranteed stream of income coming from those to satisfy their needs in their retirement years. So I would just like to kind of switch that perspective a little bit if I could.
Okay. Thanks very much, Steve. So Mike, you want to make a response? And I'm going to ask Judith if she could think about her experience in other places like Nova Scotia, and you mentioned Quebec. So Mike, go ahead, and then we're going to turn to Judith.
I think that is a great vision to have, and I think it reflects some of the experience we had in Burlington when we would speak to the local councillors about what we were doing, and they would say that, well, we have an LDC, our Burlington Hydro is doing renewable energy projects. Well, when you don't see that return going back in the pockets of the ratepayers or of the community groups, and seeing a direct tie between that renewable energy project and the revenue or the income that they can receive from it. A co-op, you can. With all due respect to the city-owned and developed projects, those revenues go back into the city or the LDC's revenue base, and it never has a direct tie with the profits that the consumers would see or that the residents would see. So we would like to see more of a direct tie through the involvement of a co-op, either in having the co-op develop the project themselves or in partnerships, because there's nothing wrong with partnering.
Thank you, Mike. Judith, can you share some of your experiences with us in Nova Scotia? And you mentioned something in Quebec.
Well, yeah, I think it's important to look at the possibilities elsewhere because we're having so many challenges here, and I think sometimes the vision gets lost because we get stuck in all the barriers that we have to face. I'm going to start actually with Germany because just the latest statistics are out from Germany in terms of the level of ownership by community members there, and it's over 50%. That's individuals that have invested in one type of one or another type of renewable energy project in that country. That's hugely significant. To consider that half of half the projects are owned in some way by citizens of that country. And I think that's the sort of vision that we need to establish here as well. In terms of Denmark is another country that's often cited is a significant amount of, I think it's even higher than in Germany, 60% of the projects are community owned. The UK is interesting, I think, to mention because they've been building community projects, particularly cooperatively owned wind projects, without a feed-in tariff program. And I think it's important for us also to be thinking about community power that is policy agnostic, because if for one reason or another the feed-in tariff program doesn't survive a change in political leadership, then we need to have a program in place or a sort of a movement in place that can survive regardless of the policy that replaces the FIT program. And CEDAF corporations have seen the opportunity of using that model to invest in locally owned community energy projects. And I think that's really a big piece that's missing in Ontario. Obviously the grid constraint issues and so on, but in terms of creating a financial model that allows wealth to stay in the province, stay local, and whether in Nova Scotia, even the CEDAF has some very strong RSP eligibility components to it. And so it addresses your question, the question from the Frontenac group about, a mechanism that ensures individuals that perhaps also don't have the expertise to assess an investment opportunity, because that's the other side of it. We can create lots of co-ops, but you're asking a lot from an individual to read the offering document and understand the energy system and feel confident that they can put their money there and that they can get their money out again, which is sort of the other big challenge sometimes with co-ops. So I think there's lots of lessons to be learned from other jurisdictions, and I feel like we haven't done a lot of that. We don't look outside of our own borders sometimes. We're a little arrogant, I think. So I don't know what the next step would be in terms of enabling that kind of cross-pollination to happen, but I think it would be an important conversations to have.
Good, thank you. Other questions from the group? Yes, David.
Dave Dio from Sault Ste. Marie. Not sure how many of you know about Sault Ste. Marie. It has about 189 megawatts of wind power on Superior. We have about 60 megawatts of solar power within the city limits, and none of that is community power. So the question I have is, if the FIT review were to come out and say that instead of 70 cents price and a 1 cent community adder, we had 55-cent price and a 15-cent community adder, how would that change the dynamic of the future?
Does any of our audience feel comfortable in starting with that? Go for it, Mike.
Sorry, well, I can say right now, David, that it would make us more competitive when we're going for the rooftops, because when we go and talk to people who own these rooftops and we can offer them a better lease rate, then we'll be more successful in getting and acquiring that as a host project. So that, I tell you right now, it would make it easier for us. More roofs.
Right.
I think on the political perspective, I don't think that opposition would actually want to boast the fact that community power is getting 15 cents more. I think that would actually be going against them maybe getting elected in the next elections. Your question is good, but we can bring the prices down as much as we want and bring the adders up as much as we want, but if we can't connect to the grid because we fall below monopoly capital, then the money is not going to make a difference. So
okay.
That's just food for thought.
Yeah, well, it's good food. Go ahead, Judith.
Yeah, no, absolutely accurate. And I guess we do have to talk about solutions on the assumption that we get grid connected. Otherwise, the conversation doesn't go very far, unfortunately. Just to address your point, David, I guess one other thought that's been floating around is for groups that are nonprofits and for municipalities, they could be eligible for Infrastructure Ontario money, so 3% money. financing money. And if community power could access that kind of low interest money over a long, over 20-year time horizon, that would actually allow us to build projects with a lower feed-in rate than the commercial sector, which again, there's different ways that we can spin this to make a community power look more attractive. I guess the question really is what's that overriding political message that we need to deliver first, and then to say, okay, and here are the possible solutions to get to that vision. So, are we talking about 500,000 Ontarians investing in community power over the next, 5 to 10 years? Where are those projects going to be located? What's the tax benefit back to the local government as well as the Ontario government? I think there's a story that's being crafted, there's a group of us trying to craft that story, but until the political will is there, I guess we can craft all kinds of creative solutions, as we have been doing. We've been coming up with all kinds of creative ways of making projects happen, and yet we keep hitting sort of those fundamental issues of grid access and moving projects forward.
Other questions from the group? All right, let me turn back to Rob Maxwell, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your program here in City of Toronto. And you mentioned the partnership with the LDC and the City of Toronto, and you also mentioned the program that the city has for smaller roofs, for community groups, not only the structural issues, but if my understanding, those roofs are 5,000 square feet and less. That's pretty small for getting a project going. Why would you give a community group a 40,000 square foot roof?
If we had one, I'd be happy to talk to you about it here. Yes, as I said, we have been very hard pressed to find rooftops to accommodate our 2 megawatt program with Toronto Hydro, and that's that was council's priority. We will entertain proposals. That there is a direction from council to work with not-for-profit groups, from community power groups, to try and find space for them. So we're more than happy to do that. We've been approached on a couple of occasions by groups that were in fact interested in small rooftops, microfit scale applications, and for one reason or another, those projects didn't proceed. But again, I go back to the question of just that very practical question of what kind of guarantee is there that the roof is going to survive 20 years underneath a PV installation? And that's the comfort that the city needs in order to proceed with these kind of installations.
Okay, and so Mr. Kerr and perhaps Michael, why don't we build on Judith's comment? How do we facilitate the political will to move this forward? What do we got to do? $1 million question, right? And I'll sort of kind of stall a little bit to give you a chance to think about it.
Is that the last question of the session?
No, it's not the last question of the session, no, because we've got lots of time yet.
Okay. Whether or not you go home depends on the answer.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to just shoot from the hip. That's too huge a question for me to
But you're building on a success.
I think I just want to pick up on some words I've heard in this session around educating people and link it to political will. I always get a little uncomfortable with the notion of education, and it's semantics, and it's based on my own experience. I think sometimes there's an implication that if we just explain something, that people will have an aha moment, and they'll all rally around the problem.
We're slow learners.
And I see some nodding heads, so that's comforting. I just, and I don't mean to dismiss the importance of the broader, notion of education, but my experience in Guelph is requires a little more thinking on the topic. Guelph's known as an activist town. We're a university town. We're kind of considered to the left and quite green, and that's a challenge for us because my phone's ringing all day with people from the community challenging one thing or another, and in the big scheme of things, that's quite healthy, but it's a lot of work to respond to. And usually when I get into trouble, if I'm the voice of an issue, is this notion of education. If I issue a press release that states something as we figured it all out, that's when I get into trouble. So I think, or I'll say we as a local government, I think the opportunity for conversation comes from all quarters, and I'll just state the recent election. I know people in the energy space, as I have been my whole career, had a hard time watching this election go down, and I know a lot of folks in the room did as well. But I found myself having conversations with the community in public meetings or one-on-one, just reminding them that there was a time, certainly in my career, where we would jump for joy if there was an energy story in the back of the Globe and Mail, you know. So careful what you wish for. Now it's become central to an election campaign, and so it's going to come in all kinds of different forms. But in the city of Guelph, it presented an opportunity for a conversation about energy, and so the education comes out of that. And a huge amount of engagement with my own community came out of this election. And I'm not talking about the outcome of the election, just the process of it. Not everybody lined up on one single issue and agreed, but the amount of awareness around the complexity of energy, what it means to my community, a lot came out of that, a lot of it. And I see it all as very positive. Our frustrations with the machinery and the bureaucracy, I think we're all on the same page with that. But I think it's, in terms of my community, rallying around our plan and how they might get involved, which links to the idea of cooperative activities, really took a leap forward because of this election. And like I say, not because of the outcome, just because of the conversation that took place. So that, I think that would be my point.
Interesting, right? Yeah, it's often that sort of point of creativity caused by tension in the environment. Changing elections creates that kind of dialogue. Mike's going to take a crack at the question as well, but is there anybody else in the group that has something burning that they would like to ask, like to share with the rest of the group that's around here today? Okay. Yeah, Janice, right. You have a speaker right over here, or a microphone rather?
Thanks.
Just introduce yourself, Janice, be great.
Sure, yeah, I'm Janice Ashworth. I'm here from Ecology Ottawa, a not-for-profit group in Ottawa. One thing that I'm surprised hasn't come up in any of the discussions to date yet is the cap that the nuclear developments are going to be placing on renewable development in the coming years. I'd be interested to hear some other perspectives from the very wise people on this panel about how the community power sector can make sure that the future of renewables in general is secure with the plans of the nuclear developments at the Liberal government level.
So by cap, you mean in the mix, there's a percentage that's proposed to be nuclear versus others. Okay, and why can't that change? Right, okay.
And if I might take a stab at this first, and Robin, to your point about educating people, and I agree totally, you don't want to start speaking to people as if you're their teacher, and you know, we try to avoid that whenever we're trying to make a point. But I tell you, I have aha moments every day. I mean, I'm learning about this, I'm learning about the environment every day, and things I've never known about before, and the impact of those. I have them every day, so I've got a feeling that some other people might have them too. And to answer your question, I think the nuclear problem is a big one in a sense. From an environmental perspective, nobody wants to see nuclear. No environmentalist will want to see nuclear out there. What we have to do is convince people that there are alternatives that are workable alternatives, because the biggest argument against renewables is the fact that they don't add to base load. They're not there when you need them. But if you can redesign your electrical system, and this is where community energy has a big role to play, if you can redesign your electrical system so that you need and you deliver and you use and you store energy in a different way than it has in the past, then that's a credible argument that should be able to eventually kill the nuclear option once and for all.
Anybody else want to try to tackle that question from Janice? No? Okay. All right. Other questions from the audience at all? So let me turn to each one of you, and I'll start with Joanne. So what's the one thing we need to do to move community power forward? And let's not blame it on others in the sense of there's the connections. What is the one thing that we can do at the community level to be sure that we move things forward? And maybe it is protesting about connections, so let me not take away from your response.
Yeah, I'll actually respond on those 2 points.
Okay, all right, okay.
The Samsung deal, that's what primed the pump for renewables in Ontario. A lot of people aren't happy about it, But that's what primed the pump. Now we're primed. Now it's time to turn our focus on community energy. How can we push this agenda forward? I think that we all need to participate. We have talent, we have money. If we don't have talent, support OSEA. I think that's where we need to be. OSEA is a one voice, it represents all of us, and I think that if we were to support them further, we've supported them to get the Green Energy Act off the ground. It worked, and I think we need to support them and keep supporting them to move community power forward. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Judith?
Yeah, I agree. We have a lot of, there's a lot of people that are interested in seeing this move forward in a positive way. And I just looking around this audience, there have been a number of events over the last couple of weeks of different groups that are all having a similar conversation. And I guess my fear is that we are all meeting separately and we're all knocking out the minister's door separately, and we're all, we're asking for, I'd say, like 80% of the same things, but we're asking it with a different perspective, wearing different hats. And I think it's not just community power. I think it's, the solar industry is in a bit of a mess, as far as I can tell, in terms of just different groups emerging. The wind industry seems to just do its own thing and doesn't really, connect with the community at all, and yet I think they would benefit the most in terms of community partnerships and raising the profile of wind in the province. So, yeah, I don't know the answer. The answer is people putting their egos aside and working together, and I'm not really sure that that's going to happen in time for us to come up with a solution that is going to benefit everybody and benefit the province of Ontario. So, I guess my response really is an appeal that we work collectively and that we have, a list of 5 priorities that everybody in the renewable energy industry is asking for. And then you can go in with your little pet projects because you're representing community or you're representing solar. But I really fear for us moving forward with the FIT process and the anti-voice being a lot better organized than we are, even though they're much smaller. It's almost embarrassing. But anyway, so for me, it's an appeal. It's about figuring out who's the right voice to rally everybody together. And I'm not sure who it is, but it needs somebody.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Harry. I just want to echo, I think it was Joanna said earlier about the great big fat queue at the OPA, and that needs to have some filters on it, and it needs a community filter. Certainly we have, in any of our, impromptu advocacy work that's come out of Guelph, has always appealed to that particular issue, the local benefit, and some value add to that doesn't seem to be on the agenda right now. So that would be the first thing I'd say. And I want to thank OSEA for inviting me as a municipality or representing a municipality, and urge you to continue to engage local governments in your advocacy work. We are very pleased to support you in that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maxwell.
Thanks, Harry. Just to reiterate a point I made earlier, I think that it's about understanding your audience and crafting your message. It's not about, when you're approaching a municipality, it's not about what the municipality can do for you, it's about what you can do for the municipality. So you've got to understand the priorities of whoever it is you're talking to. And, in the case of the City of Toronto these days, it's about economic development. It's about, how do we save money for the city, or how do we generate revenue for the city? There's a really good case in community power and renewable energy for that. But it's not about CO2 reductions anymore, folks, not in this jurisdiction. I guess the other point I would make is that, well, I'll stick with that.
I can come back to you if you like. Mike?
Thanks, Harry. And I have 3 points, and they've all been made by the other people at the table here, so I'm going to reiterate them, borrow it from everybody else. Rob, I agree. Tell your story. Just craft your story, tell your story, find out who your allies are, and then tell your story over and over and over again to the same people. The second is, let's share our successes. Let's build and help each other, because when one of us wins, we all win. If we can all share our successes, we can build on what we've learned and help the momentum gain. And then the third is support OSEA, because they are the one organization that brings us all together. And this is where we can share our knowledge.
Okay, we're not finished. We have another opportunity for you for any further questions other than anybody else. Yeah, Peter, if you help him out with the microphone there, you have to move away from that speaker behind you.
All right, am I on?
You're on, yeah.
And away from the speaker. I just, the question about why municipalities are excluded from the Green Energy Act in terms of participation, it occurred to me as I was listening just now that there's one form of energy which is actually should be very municipal, and that is garbage. Getting rid of garbage is a problem for all municipalities, and yet one of the types of garbage is green waste, which can be composted into methane, which can then produce energy and heat and all sorts of good things. This seems to be crying out for municipal involvement, because after all, municipalities are the center of getting rid of garbage. Any comments?
I don't know whether there'd be a comment on that. Maybe Rob?
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, a tremendous amount of power is currently being generated through the capture of methane from landfill gases, not just in Toronto's landfill sites, but many other municipalities as well. And there is a fit price for biogas. One project that we've just begun looking at in the city is the potential for the use of urban forestry waste wood, basically the tree trimmings that come from, in part from hydro line clearing, trees that die on public property in parks and things like that. The potential for the use of that as biomass. There's an infestation currently underway in southern Ontario, the emerald ash borer, that is going to generate an enormous amount of dead wood, pardon the expression, over the next 5 years or so. About 8% of the trees in the city of Toronto are going to die as a result of that particular insect, and the same is true over large parts of the province. And that is an enormous resource that I don't think we've quite wrapped our heads around what we can do with that. And so we're beginning to try and understand that and hope to come up with some positive results in the next few months on that study.
Okay, I think there's one more comment from the panel before we wrap.
I just wanted to add, in terms of, what can we all do? I think we can all support the projects that are out there. There aren't that many of them, but the ones that do exist have some excellent product. And if people in this sector are not buying the bonds and the debentures and the shares that are available in the community power sector, then we can't very well expect the general public to participate. So I encourage you to visit the booths that are out there. SolarShare has a booth. There's a number of different community groups that either have bonds, or there are some groups that are looking for upfront like bridge financing to move their projects forward, because there is this constraint with the regulatory body. So, if you believe in the sector and you've got a bit of money, there are groups that are looking for it. So I encourage you to support them. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much, Judith. My sort of final words is that we need good models. We need local champions who are persistent and are prepared to stay with it, because early adopters, it's always a little more difficult. So we need those models. We need the champions. We need to support good projects that have moved forward, so that we can model them as opportunities. But also I want you to remember I think as we go out on the road and we do these road shows, I keep on saying that the economic aspect of it is important. It's like love. It sends the first arrow. Like beauty sends the first arrow and is Cupid's arrow. The economic sort of benefits are critical. It's important. But when push comes down to shove, what I'm hearing from people, what they are most gracious about or thoughtful about is what Rob Kerr brought up, was that opportunity to create relationships amongst themselves. And I think community power has an opportunity to really implement energy plans, because it creates an opportunity for our communities to dialogue with each other, to understand each other. And as we've been doing projects around Ontario at the implementation level, I've been seeing that happen on a day-to-day basis, where people are coming together, people who wouldn't know each other otherwise and finding reasons to want to do something in their communities for not only themselves today, but most importantly for their children and their children's children. So thank you very much for your time. Before you leave here today, I just have one other thing to offer you, and that is to reflect on a success that has already occurred in the province of Ontario. So I'd like to invite Thomas up to the front here, and if you can say a few words about what you want to share with us.
Thank you, Harry. My name is Tom Bernacki. I'm with MK Associates, and the success that Harry is referring to is the success that Harry's referring to is a 500 kilowatt turbine that is breaking ground this week up at the Canadian Auto Workers Family Education Centre in Port Elgin. The Canadian Auto, there's a mock-up right there. It's breaking ground. And let's see, the Family Education Centre is basically a vacation and education property that the Canadian Auto Workers Union owns up on the shores of Lake Huron. And you may have heard some of the recent advocacy from the auto workers in favor of renewable energy. They obviously have a vested interest in some of their employees that are, say, lately out of work, advocating on their behalf to retool factories, as part of the green energy change that's coming. So this is a project that's been going on since about 2004. So, talking about putting your money where your mouth is, CAW has been pushing hard for seven years through a number of challenges, a number of regulatory regimes changing, and it's really the FIT program that OSEA has been advocating for that has turned it into reality finally. And in fact, Martin Ince, the president of our firm, MK Ince & Associates, first met the CAW at an OSEA presentation. He was giving a talk for OSEA, and a few members of CAW came forward and said, we'd like to maybe get a turbine up on this property. And so OSEA linked us up with them, and we've been doing some consulting for them. And it's a reality as of this week. So just want to thank Harry and OSEA for their assistance in making this a reality.
Well, here's your success. Okay, in appreciation of our panelists today, we have offering them the Applewood Farm Winery Smoke and Apple. Applewood Winery is at the corner of McGowan and Stouffville in my community, and they have been a supporter of OSEA and the green power, green energy for a long time. So please join me in thanking our panelists. And think about them when they're enjoying their ice wine. Thank you.